The following episode of The Imperfects discusses infant loss and grief. If this is something you'd rather not hear at the moment, maybe try one of the other episodes and hopefully you can give this one a listen when you feel ready.
My name is Alira Potter and I'm a proud Yorta Yorta person, and together with The Imperfects we like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We acknowledge their continued connection to land, waters and culture. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh Van Kylenberg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum.
And I'm Josh from Hugh's mum.
And this is The Imperfects.
I'm really excited about today's episode, but before we get into it, you may have just heard a new acknowledgement of country then. That was from Alira Potter. She's a trained Reiki practitioner, writer, model and mindset coach. And she's also the host of the Fill My Cup podcast on the Mamma Mia network, and we encourage you to go check that out. But Ryan, this is a big app, isn't it?
Big one. Really big one. I know we always say it. We always get excited. But it's a big one. It's a big one. And I feel like the more I say, the more we build up at the start of an episode, the more it's going to stop having sort of any sort of meaning. But we're just lucky because the people that we've been getting are just being really like we're getting some good people.
But we can't not build them up at the start because we do it to everyone. If we don't do it all of a sudden, people will go, well, this isn't exciting, this one.
Bit of a shit one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Not a good one. Not a good one this week, guys. Just
sorry,
D-level guest this week,
sorry.
And very missable. Very missable this one.
Actually, the next few are a bit crap, so maybe just.
Yeah, how about we'll send everyone an email when they get good again. No, this is where. If you've just skipped like forward 30 seconds and started hearing that, that's where we're joking. We're having a gag. Having a chuckle. No, well, today on The Imperfects, Mark Wilson from Jet, the bass player from Jet, friend of mine and now a friend of yours as well. But we'll get to Mark Wilson shortly. How are you guys? How are you sleeping? How's the sleep situation? I know it's been rocky recently. How are you going at the moment?
How are you? I reckon we've had a couple of really good days. I couldn't sleep last night, but that was my own inner critic to reference our episode last week that was keeping me up. But children-wise, we've had a great week, so I feel alive again, which is wonderful. What about you, Hugh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everyone who does it, if you've just joined the podcast recently, Josh and I both just had babies. That's why Ryan's asking about our sleep.
And how's food going down for you guys? Is it okay?
Just for new listeners, this is how we always start the podcast, inquiring about each other's sleep, taking in turns.
Yeah. I haven't asked for a while yet, Hugh. You're on solids, aren't you? You've moved on. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had some. I tell you, we're dealing with something at the moment which reminds me of, I don't know if you guys ever listened to, I can't remember what radio show it was or what station it was, but some popular radio show once did a segment where people would call up and they'd tell a story that would potentially give people chills, like when something scary would happen. Do you guys remember that?
Or is that was a Marty Sheepgold Fifi Box segment.
Oh, right.
Oh, shebang.
Shebang.
Shebang. Yeah.
Guys, going back a while ago. Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, well, I just had one Penny and I have had one that's happened to us recently, and I'm just going to see if this gives you guys the chills.
Okay.
Because that was the old radio segment, was like, does it give you the chills? I reckon this will. Very off-brand.
Did they, on the radio segment, use the Grease song, I Got Chills?
They should have.
Surely that must have been. Must have been.
I'm afraid I don't have that on the Roadcaster Pro.
No, on the Roadcaster Pro.
Ready to go?
No.
Well, this is. I'm only telling this story because you asked about our sleep. But There are two parts to our house. One of them is a very, very old part, and then there's the renovated part, which is quite new.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Penny and I are sleeping in.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And Penny and I are sleeping in separate rooms, separate levels at the moment, separate ends of the house, just because Penny's got Patrick and I've got the other two. We're keeping them separate so they don't wake each other up.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a balancing act or juggling act with three kids who all three of them are terrible at sleeping. So anyway, downstairs, the front of the house is really old. It's a really old part. And Penny's been saying to me a bit recently, I just feel this really strange presence when I'm in that room. She said it just feels a bit creepy. Something feels very strange at night. And I kind of thought, yeah, I have slept in there before. I do agree that on occasions I felt a bit weird. Anyway.
Was this like days after Patrick was born? Because it could have been Patrick. There's this really small presence which is new. I've never noticed this presence before up until very recently.
No, this is
anyway.
This is predating Patrick.
Okay,
we've actually both noticed this before. Anyway, we swapped rooms the other night, and I slept downstairs in the old room, and I was sleeping there, and I felt I was asleep, and I just felt this really strong presence, and I opened up my eyes, and for a split second there was just someone just looking over me, just standing above me, just staring at me, and then they were gone,
What?
But here's the amazing thing: it was a familiar face. It was so familiar and so real for a second. My first instinct was to work out politely what to say to them. It's a well-known Australian person. It's a well-known Australian person. There's Tony Armstrong.
Tony Armstrong from the ABC.
Yeah.
It's a lovely presence
He was
to
just
get in the
staring.
middle of the night.
Well, it was a bit scary. He looked angry, so I felt I was suddenly scared. But then I was like, "Oh, what?"
I can't imagine Tony Armstrong's been angry in his life.
Yeah, well, he was at me the other night. I don't know what I'd done. But anyway, then he sort of just disappeared. I told Penny the next day, and I said, "The weirdest thing, Tony Armstrong was looking at me last night," and she goes, "There is a presence. I'm telling you, there's some kind of..." Anyway, the next night I slept in there again. The exact same thing happened. But wait, there's an add-on to this bit. The exact same thing happened, and then he disappeared again. And I was like, "What the fuck? Tony Armstrong's back again." Anyway, that's at about 1 or 2 in the morning. I go back to bed. I go back to sleep. Elsie starts crying really early in the morning, like 4:35. And I sprinted upstairs and I grabbed her so she wouldn't wake Benji up. And wait to hear this. I bring her back into the room and I turn the lights off. I'm trying to keep it dark so she doesn't wake up too much. I put her in bed next to me and she just sits up. And I'm lying down, my head on the pillow, trying to go back to sleep. She sits up and she said this. She goes, "Daddy, who's that?"
No way.
And she was just pointing at this chair. She was pointing at this chair in the corner of the room. And I said, "No, that's a chair." And she said, "Who's that sitting in the chair?"
What?
And I nearly, I nearly had a heart attack. I just flicked the light on so quickly. I was scrambling around trying to find it in a mad panic, just smashing the wall trying to find the light. And I turned the light on, and it's just obviously no one sitting. Tony Armstrong's not sitting in the chair. And she just looked at it and she went, "Oh," and she looked really confused. And she went, "Oh, he's not there." And then she just went back down to sleep.
Oh,
How's that?
Can you has Elsie ever seen ABC Breakfast?
We watch it every morning.
Wow.
I don't want to speak for Elsie, but I think she's a big fan of Tony Armstrong, like most women.
Oh, that is... I got chills, and they're multiplying. That is...
yeah.
Oh, that is freaky.
Just a bit of a freaky story for everyone. But anyway, if this was an episode about Tony Armstrong, that'd be a great segue, but it's not. Tony Armstrong is not our guest today.
No, Mark Wilson is. Mark Wilson from Jet. Lovely, lovely man. I've known him for a few years now and has graciously agreed to come and be on the podcast. Do you have an intro, Hugh? Or
no.
Or you kind of do it. Sorry, I should have checked beforehand.
Do you want to say something? It's in there. I think we described him in the episode. Yeah. He's a rock star, and we're very happy to have a rock star in the studio with us.
Yeah. Are you going to be my girl? He's from Jet. He's the Jet, bass player from Jet. Biggest band in Australia at the time. In the world almost, I'd say.
Yeah. Ryan, you and I were on Smith Street in Fitzroy a a few months ago, and we bumped into him, and he was so. I didn't know who he was. You didn't say that's Mark. You just introduced him as Mark, and he was so lovely. Then about 3 weeks ago, I was at Rick Davies' 40th, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hi, I'm Mark. I'm going to be on your show." He said, "I'm going to be on your show in a few weeks," and I thought he meant on my show, that I'm doing around Australia at the moment, and I thought he meant he was going to be my tour manager, and I went, "Oh, right. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks for that." In Sydney or Perth or Adelaide, and he went, "Melbourne, I think," and I went, Imperfects. So it was very confusing. We had a lovely chat. He's a very, very sweet man. So,
and once you realised he was the guy from Jet, you spoke to him like a person as opposed to a tour manager.
There's no one I love more than Tom, my actual tour manager. So no, I just continued to speak to him like I already loved him.
Yeah, of
But
course.
good pickup.
Of course. It was a joke. I was joking. All right. Well, this chat with Mark, the stuff that he's gone through is pretty, it's really heavy, and it's, I just cannot even imagine having to deal with what he dealt with. Yeah. And twice. I'm trying not to be cryptic, but it's a great chat.
It's heartbreaking and heartwarming all in the same breath, I think. So there's a lot to take from this, and we'll have a good chat about it afterwards.
Brilliant.
I hope you enjoy Mark Wilson. Well, it is an exciting day today at the Imperfects because we are joined quite literally by a rock star. We are joined by Mark Wilson from Jet, who everyone knows Jet. We don't need to give any more explanation. 6.5 million records sold. The album, well, that was just one album, Get Born, which a huge, everyone knows it. It's an iconic rock anthem, really. So we're very excited. A rock star in the
Potentially,
house.
could you say the last big Aussie album? I can't think of an album since then that's been that big.
Well, was kind of the end of when people bought records. It's kind of one of the last records of the old era where there was no downloads, there was no iTunes or Napstar or anything like that. Yeah. When that came out, people still went to the store and lined up to get records.
Yeah, and that's an amazing thing to be the last kind of
pretty much, because the next record we did, it was A Different World.
Yeah,
which
right.
which was when it came out in 2007.
Yeah, okay.
And that came out. First one came out in 2003, so nearly 20 years ago.
Wow,
It makes me feel pretty old.
Hey, 42 is not too old. Yeah. That's all right. So the three of us had lunch yesterday, and we were about to jump into your story, and then we stopped and said, no, hang on, we want to talk about this tomorrow. It's a strange thing to do when you're about to launch into a conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's much better to do it live in person, right, rather than have it rehearsed, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. So I've been thinking about your story, what your story might be all night, so I'm looking forward to finding out about that. But just questions out of, I guess, my own personal curiosity. What is it like to be a rock star?
Well, first and foremost, I don't really consider myself to be a rock star.
Okay.
I'm I'm the bass player of the band, so I consider myself to be the tradesman.
Okay.
The centre half back of the band, just get the job done.
Yeah.
With minimal fuss.
Yeah.
Make everyone else look good.
Have you ever had what's the, I work a lot of sports people. When you ask sports people what they wish they could be, they all say rock star. I do feel like being a rock star, even though you think that's not what you are.
I think we want to be actors, and actors want to be musicians, because I think we want the money that actors make. And I think actors want the instant gratification that musicians get when you play a show, you play a song, you get an applause.
Yeah.
You get an applause during a song sometimes if you do a breakdown or something like that. But, someone who goes and makes a movie or whatever, they make it, and then everyone just goes, all right, next.
Yeah.
Well, I think if actors want to be rock stars and sports people want to be rock stars, I think that means you guys win. I think you have the ultimate.
Yeah.
The ultimate gig. Now, before we get into your story, one more question on I guess your career and what it's like. Do you have a moment from your career where you look back and go, that was a pretty big rock star type thing to do or experience to have?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm not a very sentimental person, so I don't really look back and be like, oh man, I don't have all my trinkets up and, all the awards and stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess like sometimes winning awards is good because you can look back and remember it as a, you know, as a thing you did. You know, you can pinpoint and be like, oh, cool, that was some you know, gratification from my industry for whatever. But we won an MTV Music Award over in Miami, playing it like, and we played at it as well. And I was like, we're not going to win this thing. Like we were just like kids from Geelong. The other guys are from Mentone and Dingley, and we're like, what are we doing here? Like Beyonce's sitting behind us. And then we won the MTV Music Award. This is probably 2004. And, you know, it was just, and then after that, we started getting invited to all these parties afterwards and stuff. So as a 22-year-old, I thought that was pretty good. And it was like, wow, this is, to get a big award in another country, you know, in the States, in front of the biggest musicians in the world.
To win an award in front of Beyonce is a pretty cool thing to say.
It's pretty intimidating when, you know, like Jay Z and Beyonce are behind you, like doing press. And because it was 2004, Little John's also in front of you. But he's not around anymore. Well, he's around, but you know, he's not, I don't think he's as popular as he used to be. But and Usher, he played. It was definitely a time and place.
Yeah.
But you know, it was, you know, I took my sister because it's always nice to take someone from the real world to experience the mental. I always saw it as like it was a circus that I was in, and sometimes I'd like to bring my friends in to it to show them how wild it is.
Yeah.
And then they'd go home sick. Like they'd get sick because it just takes so much out of you. But when you're doing it, your adrenaline's firing so much. Like you're so busy in that stage. You know, when things are really taking off globally, you're always busy. You're working nonstop. Everyone wants a piece of you around the world. So, you know, you just go, and you're a 22-year-old doing the thing you've always wanted to do and you thought you probably would never get to do because who does?
Yeah.
So you don't care.
But I guess you're also, it's not just the performing, but I'm guessing afterwards the lifestyle of someone in a rock band is pretty taxing as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely my lifestyle to this how I live now is a reaction to how I lived then. It's
really?
The polar opposite, yeah.
Okay. Can you give me examples of what would happen after a gig? Say you play a big gig.
Basically just drink and take drugs until you fall over and do it all again the next day, you know, like maybe not so much the drugs, but like, you know, that was definitely a part of it back then. Like, you know, part of what we did. I mean, it wasn't super hard, but you know, everyone did it in all the bands. But a lot of alcohol, and not much sleep.
So when you get on stage the next night, are you feeling cooked from the night before, or the adrenaline just gets you up?
Tell you what, if I did that now, I would.
Yeah.
It'd take me a month. but then the adrenaline takes you through it. And also just being young, you forget that you can actually do anything when you're that age, pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
But you also, you know, you kind of sort of pause your mental development at that age for a long time when you do that sort of thing too, I find.
Was the bringing people in also, was there an element of keeping you sane, your friends in, keeping you sane a bit?
Yeah, and because the other guys grew up together, you know, there's two brothers and their mate from school, and I met them at a pub in Melbourne, so I had, you know, a whole different friend group. I didn't grow up with the guys. I grew up in Geelong, so never met them until, you know, a couple of weeks before I joined the band.
Yeah.
So when things took off and stuff, I sort of would bring my friends from high school and all my old mates in just for, you know, just to tour with, you know, they'd come on the bus or whatever, and just to show them, and also just to bring someone in that I could sort of hang with and, you know, sort of look back and go like, how weird's this?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's kind of hard to do with you, like, you know, not that we're not close, but, you know, we weren't close because, you know, as soon as you're in a band with people, you're like pretty close already. Probably more like a sports team. But, you know, over the years you grow to be almost like brothers, or you are essentially a very similar dynamic to being brothers, I guess. Dysfunctional in my band, all of us. But yeah, bringing people in would be nice to, you know, just it'd almost be like you could step outside of it and go like, this is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Like you're tethered to the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What does dysfunctional look like for you boys then?
Oh, look, it's pretty high intensity, pretty high intensity and sort of it's pretty chaotic, and volatile. Yeah, which are things that I in my normal life run a mile from. I don't. Some people thrive on that stuff, but I don't, and it's sort of that was one of the tough things. Is like I kind of was amongst a situation where we were pretty volatile to each other. Obviously because what other jobs do they like? Here's a bunch of money, a bunch of alcohol, a bunch of fame, and some drugs on the side, and then see how you go. Yeah. Have fun,
Yeah.
And then, and pressure, add pressure to it. So, it made it volatile. But these are all things like in my real life, what I consider my normal life, away from music is I can't handle. Like I'm not volatile. I'm not an antagonistic person. I just want to get along.
So I guess to bring it back to, I suppose, this podcast and what this podcast was about, originally, really, it was we look at people's lives, especially through the lens of social media these days, and we think, gosh, it would just be so great to be that person. And absolutely looking at someone traveling the world, selling out stadiums, winning MTV Awards in front of Beyonce, you look at that and go, well, it couldn't get much better than that. Was there other stuff going on for you under the surface that people weren't aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, it's felt like a while at the time. It felt like it happened a while earlier, but my old man passed away when I was 17,
Right.
2 weeks before I started year 12.
Oh, gosh.
And so, I mean, at the time, between the ages of 17 and 21, it's like a lifetime. But looking back now, it's like not long at all. Like, it's still. So I was still, that was a shock. And also, I didn't know where I was after that. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't, it's a pretty huge, I didn't really do very well at school. I've never been that academic. I'm more of a doer rather than academic. And plus, I just goofed off. I like goofing off too much.
Yeah.
But also, couple that with, losing your father suddenly too, died of a heart attack after a run.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. And then joining the band a few years later and then it going catastrophically well was definitely a juxtaposition to how I felt as well, and also having your father die when you're 17, you don't really know I don't think until you become an adult you really know your parents until you can reflect on your experience. So never really knowing your father in a certain way and having all the experiences being like, oh, I wonder if he'd be proud of this or, would have I done anything or would have anything different happened? How would have my life tracked if, you never know.
What, I imagine you must have had quite a few moments when things are going really well of just, I wish Dad could see this.
Absolutely. And that's also why I was telling you before I took my sister to things like the music awards and stuff to share it with my older sister because like it actually was a connection to having family there as well. But yeah, of course, like it would have been lovely to have him be able to see. I know he would have been proud, but I have no idea. It would have been, he would definitely have been proud, but he was a plumber, working, grew up in Lara, working class guy. So, I'd hope that he would have thought it was pretty cool.
What did it do to the family? So you've got a sister?
I have. So my parents divorced when I was 4. So I don't really remember them being together. And then they both remarried people who are, to me, just the same as parents. Like they're as dear to me as parents. My stepfather, I got my love of music from. My stepmother is like a saint, and she's just held everything together after my dad died and everything. So I sort of have two families. So then I have an elder sister, and then they went off, and my parents on either side went off and had their own children. So I have a few like half brothers and sisters and that are like a lot younger than me and my elder sister. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about the relationship with your sister and your stepmom. Did it bring you closer together?
Definitely me and my sister for sure. you know what it's like when you move away from family and stuff. I moved up to Melbourne and then I was away. So like, and they're all down in Geelong, which isn't that far, but you know, it's still an hour away and we don't get down there much. But you know, you still talk to people on the phone, but you don't see them all the time. But me and my elder sister definitely became a lot closer, for sure.
Do you remember the feelings that you had when you were told and all that? I mean, I can't think of anything much more traumatic as a 17-year-old boy.
I probably just did that thing that I wouldn't do now, is just got on with it. Didn't ever talk to anybody because it was like, you know, I was in Geelong. It was the late 90s, you know. It's just kind of like the world is a different place now for better with mental health and people talking about stuff. And I never used to talk about anything, you know, and it was just like not a thing that I did. It took me years to be able to like, and that's why coming on podcasts like this is like almost like therapeutic because like it's licensed to just talk to people who are kind and, you know, understand and good at talking about this kind of thing. So it's quite nice. But back then I went back to work a couple of days later. You know, I was, you know, had a part-time job. I was at work when I found out.
Okay.
Got a phone call. I was working at a shitty restaurant.
Yeah, okay.
You know. And yeah.
Who made the call? Who called you?
I think it was my stepmom's sister. And then I went down to the hospital thinking that he was just in hospital. And then I went into the emergency room and there he was just, they were working on him still and it was no good.
Did you cry? Did you throw out?
Oh, yeah. I played a gig the next day with my mates too.
Really?
Yeah. I had a gig at a gig at the Barn Club, which is a small Geelong pub. It's like playing at the Tote. Similar, like it's an iconic pub. And me and my mates had a little band. We were only like 17, so we'd have to play and then they'd kick us out, you know.
Yeah.
But so we just played a gig the next night, and because I didn't want to cancel the gig, you know. And I still kind of do that. I still get on with things, but for me, it's kind of like almost therapeutic to like carry on.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
rather than wallow. But I don't know what the right thing to do is.
No, I don't think there's don't know if there's a right thing, but
I mean, I'm also 17. You know, 17. I don't know what's what.
Yeah. Before you said you didn't used to talk about this kind of stuff, and now you're clearly quite maybe an open book's the wrong word, but you seem quite comfortable and willing to discuss difficult things. Was there a point in time where you can remember a shift, or is it just something that's evolved?
I'd say it'd be like over the past few years. I find that a lot of people I know in music, they kind of pause their mental and psychological development at the age where they start doing really well. You know, so by the time I was 30, I still was like acting like 21-year-old, you know. And over the last 10 years since then, or 12 years since then, I feel like I've really learned a lot about myself. And, you know, I think that's one of the benefits of getting older and also having a lot of experience in your life to reflect on. Yeah. Trying not to regret stuff. Trying not to be, I'm quite cynical. I don't trust people. You know? Example, like someone like Ryan, not that I don't trust him, but like when I first met him, I was like, where's the catch with this guy? This guy's too nice. Or really? This guy, he doesn't like me. He's just being nice to me because he's probably like saying stuff about, you know, because he's, you know, like those really genuine people. I find like, where's the catch? You know what I mean? Like, but since obviously this is when I first met him, but you know, obviously now over time, he's just a genuinely lovely, sweet, smart, intelligent person. But I really have trouble seeing that in people sometimes. I'm like, what if their ulterior motive and I don't know why that is.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Do you still, is that as prevalent as it used to be? Because you've known Ryan for quite a while.
Yeah, not with Ryan, of course. Like,
I'm not saying specifically with Ryan, but as a general sort of.
Sorry, Ryan. Hope you don't listen to this.
I promise you will.
But yeah, I still do it for sure. Yeah, and I'm trying to be less cynical and more open, trusting of people.
I guess it's like a protective
thing
I think so. You do.
You're worried about being let down or
hurt.
Also, I don't like people not liking me a lot, you know, like it really bugs me. If I get like a terse email from a friend because I've done something, I'm like, oh, and then I realize if I just email I'm saying sorry, it goes away straight away. You know,
Yeah.
like if I know I've done something wrong, or I've you know, it happened the other day with one of my friends who was doing a job for me, and I was hassling him, and it was stressing him out, and I should have known that would stress him out if I was hassling him for something, and he hit me back with a kind of like, don't do that, you know, it's really disrespectful. And I would normally, my sort of training from being like in a combative band for years would be to like go back.
Yeah.
And I stewed on it for a minute, and I was like, I'll just tell him I'm sorry. And it did. And it all of a sudden, it all melted away, you know, all that kind of anxiety about someone. And it's about being sort of a feeling like I've been attacked or something like that.
Yeah. It's a bit about ego or something, like just dropping your ego and going,
Exactly. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to be, you know, drop the ego, not push, you know, not squash it down as much. You know?
This might be an impossible question to answer, but that that you called it cynicism before in people, do you think that's always been there, or do you think, because I imagine having the massive rise of success you've had, you'd have to be a bit cynical because there'd be a lot of people wanting to take advantage of you on that.
It's, you know what it is? It's that, and I reckon it's got to be this, where when you all of a sudden find yourself being reviewed and critiqued and slammed on websites and praised on others, and people like, you know, blogs like ripping you to shreds personally as well, like it really it does affect you. And, you know, music's pretty, like the music scene is pretty rough, you know, like the underneath of it, the blogs, and, you know, back then especially.
Yeah.
You know, and like that, people would just tear you to shreds and you pretend it didn't matter. But it would really affect you, you know.
It's so funny because I don't know why I thought this, and it's such a stupid instinct, but my instinct was that people who do what you do wouldn't be affected by.
That it does.
Of course it does, yeah.
But maybe not everyone, but maybe I'm sort of sensitive about that sort of thing. Like I wouldn't do it to someone else, but, you know, and people like personally, you know, maybe it's self-confidence thing, but, you know, people's personally ripping at you, and, you know, you read it. You'd read things because it was almost like, I don't do it anymore, of course.
Yeah.
I honestly don't care now, but maybe you care more then.
Oh, definitely.
And yeah, I hadn't really considered that because, like, when you're as successful as you guys were and are, there's always people wanting to take that down and pull it down. And music reviewers can be so nasty.
Yeah.
It's like, it seems to me more than any other, I can't think of another creative field where there's such a venom in the reviews that are written, and that must have been awful.
Yeah, it wasn't. It really affected me, and I think that's definitely where I became cynical and worried about what people sort of thought about me, because you know, there was circumstances where people would have a go at, like, you know, like the way I looked and stuff like that, you know, and which you wouldn't do now, you know. You just, like, you know, like I was a bit overweight back then, and people would like tear me down, you know, like in like online and stuff, which you just wouldn't do now. Like, I don't know why I read it, but it was kind of like you couldn't look away.
No, I totally understand why you would.
Yeah.
Because it's not a thing you used to. It's not a normal thing to have.
Yeah.
To know what strangers think of you,
especially as a 22-year-old who's, you know, just gone through losing his parents, having a wild thing happen. Well, not losing my father, and then having a wild sort of success. It's pretty. I see now. I was like, feel sorry for myself.
Yeah, you're a vulnerable kid.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What? So you're a dad now.
Mm-hmm.
You've now got how old's your
4-year-old daughter?
4-year-old daughter. So, one of the things that happened to me when I became a dad for the first time was I remember thinking, oh gosh, so mum and dad love me as much as I love. Wow, gosh, mum and dad love me a lot.
Yeah.
So that's one of the realizations.
Feel bad, right?
Yeah, totally.
About how you've treated your parents.
Totally.
Absolutely. And then, you know, this is going to happen to you too.
Yeah.
You're just looking at your child's face and you're like, you're going to do the same thing to me when you're 16.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but one of the things that happened to me, I thought a lot about mum, but also a lot about dad and the way he was a father to me, and then our relationship. And did that happen to you as well? Have you been thinking about your dad more now that you have your own, you know, that you're a dad?
In a lot of way, definitely in a mortality way, for sure. Because he
Okay.
died when he was 48 and I'm 42.
Okay.
So, in my own mind, the fuse has burning, because I know it's stupid, but I'm like, oh, what if I died when I was 48 after I go for a run? So that's a definite thing that is on my mind constantly. That sort of being there for you. And so that drives me to do what I do now is I make sure that what I do, sometimes I've got to go away for periods of time because I go on tour. But what I do allows me to be able to be there so much more during the day. I can pick my child up from kinder. I can be with her in the morning when she wakes up. I'm not rushing. And I tell this to her all the time. I'm like, some dads are gone when you wake up and they don't get home till you go to bed. So
appreciate that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I appreciate that insight.
I have heard stories of the kinder,
But so yeah, definitely that makes me want to, and not just my daughter, my wife as well. My wife Lani, definitely makes me conscious of being able to spend time, how precious that time I get to spend with them is, and how lucky I am that I have work where I don't have to go away every day and I miss certain things, like that's, for me, that's a bonus of what I do. Even though it does take me away for periods of time, I try and work it now so happens as less amount of time as possible.
Yeah. Just as you're saying that, I was thinking about our dad who yesterday turned 74. His father passed away playing golf when he was 40.
I thought it was 48.
Right, maybe it was 48. Yeah, so similar age.
Same age.
Same age. Okay,
I could be wrong, but that's the number I've always had in my head.
Yeah, 48. So, and ironically, incidentally, Dad has the same thing about thinking that he won't live. When he put Josh and I down for MCC membership in the Melbourne Cricket Ground, he didn't put himself down.
I'm a member too, don't worry.
Just checking.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I had to show it on the way in.
So when Dad would have been 38 when he was putting us down, and we said, why didn't you put yourself down? And he said, well, I didn't think I'd be alive in 10 years' time.
So that's what I'm like. That's why I try and be as healthy as possible now. And, I still enjoy a drink, but that's it. That's as far as I go. Still like a glass of wine and whatnot, but, try and eat healthy and exercise a lot.
I want to come back to your running in a minute for obvious reasons, as our listeners will know. But the journey to parenthood was a rocky one for you and a challenging one for you.
Yeah, definitely. We had one of the greatest misfortunes or tragedies you can have as a family, and we our first child we had was stillborn, which is probably one of the most profoundly sad things that's ever happened to me in my life and continues to be. And it can tear families apart, but it really galvanized me and my wife's relationship, I guess, as like a real team. But yeah, it was super rare genetic problem that can't be picked up really, and had a stillborn daughter called Mickey, full term. And then we tried again and then had a perfectly healthy daughter called Goldie, who's an absolute whirlwind and a force. And then we thought, well, let's try again. And then we had another stillborn full term called Nancy. So it happened twice. So it's cruel to happen once, but I don't know for it to happen twice. The second time I didn't even tell people that Lani was pregnant who weren't obvious people who would see us because I didn't want to. I didn't want to go. I was like, I don't want to go through. And obviously the pregnancy with Goldie was so stressful for me because Goldie, my daughter, because I thought it was going to happen again. I was like the whole time up until the last minute, I thought it was going to happen again to the point where, she was nearly born on the side of the road, Goldie, because she was so desperate to be in the world, and which was good. But I mean, we live in Melbourne, pretty close to the Children's Hospital, and we nearly didn't make it.
Gosh.
And then, like I said, so we tried again, and then and I thought, okay, maybe that was just a 1 in a million thing, and then third time happened again. And they still couldn't really figure out why. And then they asked us if we wanted to be involved in like a test where they don't know much. The way geneticists are like the most insanely smart people on the planet.
Mm.
And this guy Anand, who at the hospital, he sort of basically told us that, we don't really know much, but they still know a lot. And he said, but we can sort of do these. There's a lab in Adelaide doing a lot of studies, and if you would be interested, you could donate some cells from your baby and also your cells, and they can study it. But look, you won't find out anything. You won't know anything. So he's like, the chances of us actually finding the problem he's like, it's like, say, imagine going into a library and you look at all the books, right? And I'm not a geneticist, so I'll probably get the analogy wrong. But he's basically saying, looking at all the books, and that's like the genes, and we can't even look into the books, to find out what's going on. We can just see what's all the information's in the books. We can't open the books.
Mm.
So anyway, they did this test, and then out of the blue, my wife got a call, and it was an aunt saying, "You won't believe it, but we've found the gene that's causing this genetic anomaly between me and my wife. It's super rare, and they found this brand new gene so apparently we can probably test for it again,
Right.
but it's still, you can't fix it. You can just try again, but at least now they'll know. But it's this super rare condition.
I think about the emotional attachment, the love you have for your child before they're born.
Mm.
I remember feeling that very strongly with all three of our kids, but especially for the first time. And it's not like it's hard to put into words the connection you have with someone you've never met before.
Absolutely.
I actually can't imagine what you must go through in that moment.
Especially for my wife as well, who who actually had a physical connection to them.
Yeah.
Rather than just mental, spiritual connection. Absolutely. It's like you can feel them before you've held them,
Mm.
But we had to go to the hospital and have, you'd find out, and then you have to go to the hospital and have a baby, and everyone else is going home with babies, and you go home with nothing.
That's so traumatic.
In the legit birthing ward, they don't have they put you right down the end. They're very sweet, obviously the Royal Children's, but it doesn't make it easier.
Sorry to be so specific, but you found out before the birth when you went to the hospital for the birth, you knew
we knew, yeah.
And how far ahead of that did you find out?
Like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
God. So you've had 8.5 months of thinking one thing, and then
maybe like 35 weeks. I can't. I try not to remember the details.
Yeah.
You know what the other shit thing is?
Mm.
It was a day apart in the year. So in April, it happened at the same time. Yeah.
Jeez.
So there's a really shitty week every year for my family.
Yeah.
Every year. Yeah. And also telling my daughter, who was so excited about it, that was one of the toughest things and kids are inherently narcissistic, that's just how they have to be.
Yeah.
So they think about themselves, but it still affects her. And then we go visit friends who've had kids, and then my daughter would be like, cry in the car on the way home, be like, why don't I get to have a baby? That's the thing that breaks your heart.
Mm. How did you tell her, if you don't mind me asking? Do you remember how you...
Sorry, I just got...
No, that's all right.
That's fine.
I was lucky enough, at my gym, I met a guy called Gregory, who's a child psychologist. I just got in touch with him and said, look, this has happened. And he was so gracious, and he just said, meet me at the cafe and with Lani, and we'll just have a chat. We just met in a real social environment, and he just basically said, you got to be straight and tell her simply what happened without metaphors and things like, oh, like she went to sleep and never woke up, like that, because that's you don't want to give your daughter trauma about not being able to sleep. So basically, we just said, your baby died. She wasn't ready for the world, and now she's a star, because that's like she can look up and.
Oh no, yeah.
I can't imagine a tougher conversation to have
with a. Yeah, how old was she? Sorry, I'm getting a bit.
No, that's all right.
Shaky. I shouldn't say sorry. That's why we're on here, right? She would have been what? This happened in COVID, so no one really. It was easy to keep a secret.
Gosh,
because you didn't see anybody. You could. It was all behind closed doors, a lot of it. So, so she would have been 2.5, 3. Yeah, 2.5, 3. She would have been 3.
Have you told her about Mickey as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she knows. She's she brings it up at the weirdest times too. She definitely gets jealous of people who have young, because a few of our friends had babies. We're all, there's a stage. You know how it happens. It's like everyone seems to have babies at the same time. So we go visit people, and it's really hard to like. At early stages, it's really hard to go and feel good, happy for others.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, like you get over that stuff and get through it.
Everyone's child is so precious, but there must be, looking at Goldie, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With what you've gone through, you must have just an incredible sense of, I don't know what, when you look at her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get worried about her, like I don't, be careful. I took her skiing in Queenstown last week, and I was like, oh no, don't hurt yourself. But also I don't want to be someone, I try not to say be careful, because that's just going to instill some sort of other problem, like you just want her to, I try and say, instead of being careful, I say, just think about where you're going to put your foot when you're climbing up the banister of the stairs, rather than like, be careful on there, because I don't want to just say, be careful, or, don't do that. Very, But yeah, she's good. She's very good fun.
How would you describe her as a
oh my God,
as a human being?
I don't know. She is off her head. Like, she wakes up on bang. What are we doing today? It's a bit like me. She's like 110% all day, and then doesn't sleep at night. Yeah, she's absolute force. She's going to be a terrifying person. She's got all the great things you would want in a strong, powerful, grown-up woman. But as a kid, it's really challenging, all those personalities. But and I've got to remember that, like, me and her, like, Lani's like, why do you argue, you two? Like, we argue, like, me and Goldie have arguments because we're quite similar and headstrong, and like, we want to win the argument, But it's like, and she's like, she's a 4-year-old.
One of my best mate has a 4-year-old girl, and they sound quite similar. He said she's either going to be a CEO or she'll be a gang leader in a prison.
Yeah, that's like her. That's like Goldie, yeah. She told me the other day she wants to be a doctor, a builder. She's into being a builder, a snow teacher, which is like a ski instructor. And she's got all these careers she's going to have. So she already knows what she's going to do, and they're all pretty good.
You said before these things happen and then you sort of have to move on.
Mm.
Do you still think about Mickey and Nancy?
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's hard to conceptualize, like, I mean, of course I do when I think like, oh, we'd, you look at Goldie and you'd be like, what would it be like to have another, imagine if I had 2 lunatics. But yeah, of course, you always think about it.
Yeah.
And also how you see it affecting your partner as well, and how they think about it as well. And you when Goldie talks about it, it kind of, I don't want it to be awkward because we sort of put it into it that that's that it is normal, that like there's a lot of, the good thing is there's a lot of books and things now that help explain things to kids, but there'll be a dead bird on the ground, she'll be like, well, that's the end of its life. she knows about that now, which like kids normally, like she knows a lot at a young age, I think. But yeah, it's still heartbreaking when she talks about it, through her perspective.
Yeah.
I imagine that going through something like that could add an enormous stress to a relationship. Like it's going to put a relationship under an enormous amount of stress, and relationships can go either way through that. And it sounds like you were saying it galvanized and strengthened your relationship. Can you tell us more about how that happens?
Yeah, so I'd say, with us, like I said, I've seen, sometimes trauma can really drive a wedge between, like, in relationships, because people deal with things completely differently. And I think for me and my wife, it really galvanized our partnership or our bond or whatever, and made us a stronger team the more things we went through like that. I don't know why, but it's just, I guess it's our personality. I think we really complement each other, and she's very much more in touch with her mental state than I am, and she helps also, but that helps me sort of go through. She understands what I need as well to process things and go through things. So I definitely feel that it galvanized our relationship and made a stronger bond, because we'd gone through these sort of really tough things together, got through them together, and moved on, but sort of moved through life together.
Yeah.
But didn't sort of, and it's the thing is, it's a true shared burden when it's a child, so it's the loss of a child is like, it's literally the definition of a shared sort of burden that you carry together.
Your wife sounds like an amazing person.
She is. She really is. Yeah.
How would you describe her?
She is.
And how'd you meet her as well?
I met her just through a bunch. She was friends with all my friends already, and I'd never met her. And I was like, "How have I never met this person?" And I was like, "Who is this? Who's that? Fuck's that?" and all my mates were like, she's Lani. She's got a boy. She goes out with this guy, and I was like, she's got a boyfriend. Oh, bugger. Anyway, a little while later, things worked out, and we got together, and it definitely changed my life. Like, one of those relationships you get in, and you're like, life can be pretty easy, like, like it's the opposite of that I was saying earlier, where I don't like the conflict, and I, like, we don't really argue. I think she's good at letting me be. I'm probably a little bit more. She doesn't let sometimes my behavior. She doesn't let it rub off on her or take it on board. She's just like,
He's doing his thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just lets me do it. And then she knows that I'll just get through it, and then I'll be fine. She doesn't take any of my horse shit on board.
You seem to be in a really, I don't know the best word to describe it, but in a very healthy place with all that's happened in your life. Like, you've lived a crazy life, 42 years of age, and all the stuff you've been through. You seem to be someone who copes pretty well with the ups and downs.
I guess so. I probably squash things down a little bit, as my wife will tell you. She was like, "You're going to go on there and just say, the thing I do is just squash it down."
Everyone do this.
Yeah. Which is not recommended, but I'm always trying to be better. I wish I was more patient with things like mindfulness and meditation, but I can't. I'm the kind of person is, if I'm sitting down, I feel like I'm wasting time, which is a terrible thing.
No, I'm the same.
I wake up early, I go exercise, and then I do what work I have to do, and then I don't sit down. I don't sit in a chair all day, stand up all day.
I was curious, and sorry, this is sort of jumping around, but I'll wedge it in now. Have you spoken to other people who have gone through what you've gone through?
Not really. I don't really know anybody.
Yeah.
Other than a dear friend that it happened to recently.
Okay.
But yeah, I did find out afterwards, a friend of mine, he said, this happened to us too. So, you did get calls from people out of the blue like that, just making sure you're all right. But people are so. It's such a touchy subject for people. They don't want to talk about it. You know, like that's why I try and talk about it as much as I can, because otherwise it's not real. Otherwise these people didn't. You know, these people existed. They're you know, not just like spiritually, but on paper. Like I have 3 daughters. You know, like on birth deaths and marriages, I've got 3 daughters. You know, that's they're you know. So you got to talk about them. You got to, and also if any, you know, if there's anyone listening or whatever that has gone through it, like it's sometimes refreshing to hear it, because it is such a taboo, and people are so scared about talking about it because, you know, it's the worst. People don't like talking about the worst thing or one of the worst things, you know.
Yeah, it's very true. I feel like. I don't know. I'm sure I do know people who have been through it, but I don't know.
And also it's like we were very late in the stage, but it's the same trauma people have if there's a miscarriage. You know, like there's no difference in time. It's still a traumatic experience. You know, the same. You can feel it the same way. You know,
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up, because I really don't mean to compare, because I feel that because we had, when we were trying for our first, a couple of miscarriages, but they were quite early ish. But the experience of when I told a couple of mates, I found out the second one when I was actually at a music festival with all my mates at Meredith, and my wife wasn't there, and she called me to tell me, and I was so shell shocked. I had no other option but to tell my mates. And I was shocked at how many others in the circle had gone through that.
Yeah.
And the feeling of being able to know that you're not alone and other people have gone through this was so powerful for me, and it's really stuck with me. And I was left with this feeling of like, what the fuck has no one told? No, why has no one told me that heaps of people go through this?
It is one of the greatest taboos we have, isn't it? It's like really, you know, like to talk about losing a child seems to be something that people just internalize.
Yeah. And I really don't mean to compare what I've been through.
No, I mean,
what you've gone through.
You're not comparing. It's fine.
Yeah, but I it's more to say a real thank you and how much I respect what you're doing talking about it, because I think it's so important for people out there to know that other people have gone through this.
Yeah.
And you're not alone in this.
Absolutely.
Awful, as you said, what I can only imagine is the worst possible thing to go through.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, and it might be one of those things that's hard to quantify if you've not had, you don't have kids yet, or you're not a parent. It might be more difficult to quantify the gravity of it. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Would not recommend. 0 stars.
I am interested to know about what you do. As I said before, you seem to be, you say you stuff it down a bit, but there's also clearly things you do every day that help you to deal with all this stuff. Exercise is a big one for you.
Very much, yeah.
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 Because you say you don't do meditation, but I always feel...
Well, yeah, that's what my running is. You know, I love running, long distance running, even though I don't look like it. It's there. That's it's not only my meditation, it's my therapy that I do with a friend. You know, like we talk about stuff when we're running, you know, for most of it.
Yeah.
Because I'll do like every Saturday I'll do a 20K run with one particular mate, Chris. And me and him just talk about life and about what's going on. And it's that time, it's like that time where you're basically subconsciously making sure you're all right and you're listening to your friend. And it's great to have nothing else to focus on other than running and talking. Running's easy. You just do it. And then, so it just frees you up to talk freely with your friend. As you get into the 20K run, talking gets less, especially when you hit a few hills.
You're getting like so many forms of therapy in that run.
Yeah.
Like,
and the endorphins
therapy,
as well.
The endorphins. Yeah.
It's good. So I guess that's I don't feel like I'm doing that. Like, I feel like if I sat down to meditate in a quiet room, I would really struggle to do it, because I would be like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at being quiet, and I'm not very good at relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who's a psychologist said to me, after they'd heard me speak, they said, I think you should put in a bit about meditation and just say, it is not for everyone. In fact, it can have quite the opposite effect for some people who sit there with their thoughts. And she said, exercise is so much better for so many people as a form of, exactly what you just said, like, the therapy and the time where you're actually not, even if you are by yourself. Sounds like you don't ever really run by yourself.
Oh, no, I do. I ran by myself today. I often run, I'll do 25K on my own.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Often like today I listened to one of your old podcasts. So I like listening to podcasts when I run, just because I don't like, if I run without listening to, I don't like listening to music when I run.
Mm-hmm.
But if I run without a podcast on, I get a song loop in my head and it's always like one of my kids' songs from some TV show or CD or song she likes, and it drives me insane. So to combat that, and that's why I don't like swimming, because I'll get a short loop of a song in my head and I can't get it out and it drives me nuts. So I listen to podcasts, but I like listening to like long form things that you can kind of lose yourself in a little bit. And I guess
the kilometers kind of disappear a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know like my stepfather, who is a professional runner and a very, very good running coach now, the idea of him listening to music while he's running is, he would just be like, "What are you doing? That's not why you run." Yeah, like that. He's a pro. He's an ex-pro. Yeah, he's an long distance, middle distance pro runner. So that's definitely not what you do if you're serious about running.
I learned that very quickly when I started when I got a little bit better. I realised, started training with athletes. They're not listening to music.
No, they're like listening to their bodies. Yeah.
But I'm not. That'd be like a footy player having headphones on while playing or something. Yeah.
I hope this isn't too much of a cliched question for you, but the band that's had the biggest influence on you?
It's a pretty rare, obscure band called the Beatles from Liverpool, which is a totally uncool thing to say. It's everyone will try and pick some like sort of underground band, but I got to say the reason I started playing bass was because I love Paul McCartney and his bass playing, amongst others. But like that's the constant in my life that I could always listen to is the Beatles. Yeah. And now my daughter loves it, and she sings Beatles songs in her room when she's on her own playing, and I record them without her knowing. And she's got a good voice. It's good. She's got a better voice than me. She's got good pitch.
Good pipes. Do you still get the joy of playing music? And is that still
playing live? Is still one of the greatest. That I never ever get tired of playing live gigs. Doesn't matter what it is. I love it. Yeah, it's for me. It's just like that's the game. That's game day, and it's the camaraderie with the everything's nothing matters when you're doing a gig, and touring with people that you really get along with and that you like being around, and it's just the most fun.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the live is just unreal. It's just great. There's nothing that compares to it. I love recording records as well. It's a different thing. It's like bands, you have two modes, There's the recording mode and there's a touring mode, and they're very, very different things.
But the joy is still there.
Yeah.
Great.
And the joy to, I wish that to be able to go and make a big record with a huge budget again would be great, but that doesn't happen anymore, we used to go to LA and make a record and spend 8 weeks on it and have catering come in and then make a video clip that would cost as much as a house. And that's how you did it then. But now it's like oily rag because, it doesn't, but the touring is different. The touring is just constant. It's the same as it was, but I just do it a bit better now. More running,
more sustainable,
more running, and nicer bottles of wine, but less of it. You know?
Mike, it's been so lovely to chat to you today. I always feel really overwhelmed with gratitude for our guests when they come in, especially when it is to share something when it's something that is taboo. When it's I had a similar feeling when my wife came here and talked about her issues with OCD. OCD is a taboo. And there was a sense of gratitude I felt for her being my wife also. And Rick Davies, who I know I saw you at his 40th the other night, who when he spoke about his issues with OCD, it's another, it's a taboo topic. So if you to come in and do this, I have that same feeling of deep gratitude for you doing that.
My pleasure. Thanks for listening to me.
But I also know that there'll be people listening to this who will feel great. Will find great strength in hearing you talk because they've been through the same thing. And like you said, people talking about it is good. And so on behalf of Josh and myself and Ryan and all our listeners, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank
Really
you for having me.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, he's a beautiful man, and it was so nice of him to share all that, because I don't know how much he's spoken about any of that outside of his like close friendship and family group. So it was very kind of him. I imagine if people are listening who have gone through similar things, I imagine that would be, I don't know, maybe a bit comforting. Maybe I guess it's always just good to know other people are going through similar things when it's really tough.
Well, also Josh as well, for sharing what you shared on the exact same topic was, I think two men talking about this stuff. I haven't heard a conversation like that between two men before, so I think it was really, really special, really special.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, not exactly the same. But I think what we went through is quite common. I think what him and his partner went through is so rare. And to your point before, Ryan, I think when I started talking to my mates about having the miscarriages, I was shocked at how many people had gone through it, and just the knowledge that quite a few people had been there before and gone through this. Even that just made it a little bit easier. So I just really hope that what he did, hopefully he's done that for people out there who are going through this or have been through this and feel so alone. Hopefully he's made it just that little bit easier to get through what I can only imagine is the most awful thing one of the most awful things you can go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like I just can't even imagine it happening once and then to kind of like, I mean, I don't have children obviously and have not tried to have children. But I can only imagine the anxiety and stress that comes with going into it, like entering that sort of journey. Anyway, because you want it to, you want your child to be healthy, you want it to go well, you want all the things to go as they're supposed to go. So then to have a stillborn once is just horrific. I mean, I cannot even imagine. But then to have a child, to have Goldie, they have their daughter Goldie, and then to go and try again. I don't particularly want to analyze Mark's situation. It's probably not my place to talk about him when he's not here. But I guess I'm just sort of trying to just voice like how scary that would be to go into that again, having experienced what he'd already experienced, him and Lani had already experienced.
Yeah. Well, in listening back to the episode, I guess the theme that came through in that episode was trauma, and I think we do talk a little bit about trauma on this podcast, and I think a lot of people who will be drawn to that episode may have been through similar things with loss.
Well, with his dad as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I found myself just throughout that chat I couldn't help but wonder what is having not been through it, having not lost someone really close to me like that. At a young age, I guess. I was just thinking about what are the evidence-based ways to dealing with trauma, and so I just went away and had a look at it, and I just wanted to chat about something that I came across, which might be helpful for people listening, thinking, "Yep, I'm going through trauma and going through loss as well." It's not my stuff. It's someone else's. I have to be very clear. It's someone's 6 steps to dealing with trauma, and I thought it was so good. So I want to share it with everyone. Well, I've added one. I've taken a bit of liberty, I've added my own step in there.
You couldn't help it. Just Hugh's bonus number 7 is, and number 7, just smile. So is this trauma in regards to loss specifically, or is it any sort of trauma?
Any kind of trauma that you've been through.
Okay.
Yeah. And I found the 6 things they were fascinating, but also looked incredibly helpful, and they're all research-based. So this is for anyone who's struggling with loss or trauma right now. And I'll say this just before we say the 6 strategies for helping people deal with trauma. If it helps people deal with trauma, obviously, I think these are going to be really good things for people to do regardless, just to improve their mental health, to help them cope better in challenging times, and also generally just to feel happier.
Yeah, okay.
So I found these 6 steps from a guy called Bessel van der Kolk, and people might know Bessel's work. He's the author of the very, very popular New York Times bestseller, The Body Keeps the Score. He's a physician, he's a psychiatrist, he's been studying trauma for 50 years. He actually did the first study on Prozac and Zoloft to see if they're actually effective ways of dealing with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. And what he found through his studies was they actually don't do a huge amount to actually deal with helping people get through their trauma. That's the Prozac and the Zoloft. So I've read so much of his stuff in the last little while since we had Mark, and I've been watching a lot of his stuff, and he's now become my dream guest to have on this podcast. He's just an amazing man. So, Bridge, I'm just watching our producer write that down right now. Actually, I got asked the other day in an interview I did, someone said to me, and who would your 3 dream, if all 3 of you had a dream guest, who would it be? And I just sort of panicked, and I said our favourite person in the world, not our dream guest. So I said, Josh, I said yours was Julian Casablancas from The Strokes. Yeah. I don't know if he's the person you'd want on this podcast. I don't know if he fits the bill for this podcast.
He's a famously impossible person to interview. So I think it would be very difficult and probably not that entertaining, and I'd be too nervous. So good start.
So I got that wrong. Ryan, I know who yours is. Yours is, I got it wrong though. In the moment I panicked and said the wrong person. I said Jerry Seinfeld for you. Who
I don't think Jerry's notoriously not extremely vulnerable, so I don't think he'd be sharing that much on.
Yeah, clearly you want to interview the king of the present moment. He's your man.
E.T.
I can't tell you.
E.T.
Yeah. and I said for my E.T. I said LeBron James.
You know what? Yeah, if I can't get E.T., then my very close second would be Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. Okay.
Yeah, that would be.
I'll keep that in mind for next time.
Bridge, write that name down.
Bridge, she's writing them down. Bridge is writing all these down. She didn't write LeBron James down though.
Make sure you get the J. Michael Fox. No, Michael J. Fox. Very important J.
Anyway, so Bessel van der Kolk has become my dream guest. So he just spoke out, and I'm going to try and paraphrase his 6 steps here. So, but in the show notes, we'll put a link to this video on YouTube because it's beautifully shot as well. It's 8 minutes. It's wonderful to watch. So, he basically talks about what happens when you experience trauma. Is this something happens to you, and your survival brain makes an interpretation of, is this a dangerous or a safe situation for me? When living with trauma, our survival brain, it kind of acts like we're not safe. That's this mode it goes into. We're under threat. So he says it's important to understand that these reactions that we have from trauma emanate through your body. And so the challenge of treating trauma is, how do we get people to live in a body that feels safe again? And so off the back of that, here is 6 steps. And then, of course, my bonus one at the end.
So can you say that again? How do we get people to live in a body that feels safe again? So he said,
Yeah, because someone who's living in trauma, their body's been, I guess their nervous system has been shaken up and is kind of shot to pieces in a way that they don't feel safe physically. Mm-hmm. Their nervous system doesn't feel safe.
Yeah. Okay.
I again, watch his video, listen to his words, not mine. No, do listen to my words, but if you want extra clarification, go and watch his video. And he did this work, remember, because he found that the drugs that were prescribed for people who were going through something, who were experiencing trauma or PTSD, just weren't really working properly, being Prozac and Zoloft. So here's his number 1 step. So number 1, psychotherapy. So I think he's referring to therapy there. So it's counselling or psychology or psychotherapist, yeah.
Just any sort of therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said it's not to fix people, but to help them to acknowledge that what has happened to them was horrible, and they need to take care of the wounds that they're carrying around inside of them. It's just a very simple one. It's not to fix them, but just to acknowledge what they've been through is full on, and it's okay to be struggling. Number 2, EMDR, which we mentioned on this podcast a couple of times before. Jam, your partner's tried it. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Yeah, Dr. M's talked about it as well.
Yeah. So this is where a reminder for people who've listened to us on this before, but the person recalls the event, how they felt. Then they follow their fingers from side to side with their eyes. When this theory was first run by him, he thought it was just crazy and ridiculous. But when he looked into it, he looked at the research behind it, he realised it helped people to let go and made them realise that what happened to them a long time ago, and it's not happening to them right now. It was a really powerful way of creating that separation of that happened to me, but I'm actually safe right now. I'm no longer under threat. He said it was a really powerful way of doing it.
I mean, I've with Jam, because she's done it, like you said, and I've seen it. I've literally seen it work. Like it works. Like it specifically, at least in Jam's experience, you specifically target specific traumas from your past. It's going for certain memories and certain traumatic experiences or events from your past.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, it definitely worked for Jam.
That's EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Number 3, the next 2 are actually very relevant to you, Ryan, 2 things that you have done a bit of. Number 3, very simply, is yoga. His studies showed that yoga was more effective. Why are you laughing?
I've done it twice.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, I've done it 1.5 times because the second time I wasn't getting the praise I was after, and so I kind of stopped doing it properly.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So his study showed that yoga was more effective. It was a more effective form of dealing with trauma than any of the drugs that they studied, which I find amazing. And he said, again, it's getting in touch with developing a deeper connection and relationship with your body. And he feels very much that the body is so shaken up from trauma that it's getting you to get control back. So yoga was number 3, which I just love because so many people do that already. Number 4, very much relevant to you, Ryan, is theatre.
Dunking.
Oh.
Sorry. I just assumed you meant how I just dunk the basketball all the time. But no. Okay, theatre,
No,
yeah.
It didn't come up in his studies. I haven't, not that I've seen yet. I haven't read his books, but
we should ask him again.
Number 4 is theatre and movement.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Playing different roles in your body help the individual to feel that your body can feel differently depending on how you organise your relationship with yourself. So you can actually, through acting and theatre, you can see what it feels like to be a king or to be a warrior and to experience braveness. It's just this, well, it's not an out-of-body experience, it's a very in-body experience, but it's proof that you can change the way you feel simply by performing on stage to feel that you are capable of that kind of change.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can really relate to that. There is something about, like, every now and again when I act, when you're acting with people that you trust, and you're playing a character of some sort, there's a real flow to it because you're completely in this scene, and particularly in some scenes where I've been able to improvise. Like there are certain times where you're able to stay in character and then you can kind of improvise in that character. There's a lot of advice that has come from many people that to try improvisation classes. Like if you want to kind of learn more about yourself or become more confident, a lot of corporate businesses do it. A lot of in the business world, it's a known thing to be more confident as a public speaker or whatever to do. But God, I mean, doing improvisation for that particular reason where you get to kind of, even for a moment, be someone else. Yeah, it's an amazing experience. It's so much fun. I'd love to do improv with you guys.
I feel like we do it once a week whenever we do our whenever we do ads.
Yeah. Why don't you guys? You too.
True.
Well, yeah, but in character, I'd love, Josh, I'd love to see you walk in as a police officer making an arrest or something.
That's my worst nightmare, I think. We might have to do it.
It is.
We must do an episode. It's a video episode of us doing improvisation with you.
Well, you know who we should get in to do it as well.
We should get Steen in to do it with us.
Harry.
Well, Steen is, Harry, I was going to say, Steen is one of the great improvisers I've ever seen. But But Harry Garside, yeah, I feel like he'd be up for it. He would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I'd be so bad.
I would be worse, I think. I think I'd be worse.
Practically speaking, for theatre and movement for 4, like I'm just trying to think, like, what is a practical way that someone could apply that?
Well, he talked about where he grew up as a kid. There was a group there. It was something to do with Shakespeare. It was a Shakespearean group where people would go and recite Shakespeare. And he said if you were a juvenile delinquent, there was a 50% chance that you'd end up being sent to this, where he grew up, sent to this club, this Shakespeare club, where they sent all kids who were struggling and were on the wrong road and were headed to a very bad direction. They would send them to this Shakespeare acting class.
Jeez.
And it just had profound impacts on them.
Where did he grow up? Like Buckingham Palace? Like, what a weird... It's the poshest punishment I've ever heard. You've got to scull a pint of tea and then read Shakespeare.
I didn't catch where he was growing up, but in the edited video they brushed over that very quickly. That was the edited part, but you got the point that he was making. But the details were. I did think you'd find that quite amusing, but I didn't actually plan to talk about that bit there, but because I knew it'd be too confusing to you.
Okay, no, all good.
We can look forward more
that's
into that.
good. Read Shakespeare. Yeah, good practical
so,
tip.
Yeah, I think people. I think for people who are. I was picturing someone who's quite not a great place going, okay, got to start reading Shakespeare, and their partner gets home and they're dressed up in stockings and a ridiculous hat and they're reciting.
Holding a skull. Yeah.
Okay, so that's number 4. I'll summarise these at the end. When we've gone through the descriptions,
Okay,
I'll summarise them all, maybe some practical strategies. Number 5 is very simple, is neural feedback. Now, I don't know how you organise this for yourself. I'm sure you could speak to a doctor about this, but it's basically where they attach neuroimaging devices to your head and they measure your brain activity. And when you make brain waves that help you to feel calm and relaxed, you get some kind of positive reward for it, which is to help you, I guess it's to teach you that you can shape your brain to be open to new experiences. So it's about giving you real-time feedback for the strategies within your brain, which are creating calming brainwaves. So I think if you want more detail on that, that's all the information I know on that. That's everything I can tell you about that. But people can look that up there, neural feedback.
Yep.
And number 6 is psychedelics. So it's drugs, basically.
Well,
which
you make
not all drugs.
You make it sound bad. Whereas, like, I mean, you're probably going to explain it better than me, but psychedelics is like it's such a big thing, isn't it? In like treating mental health and treating trauma. Yeah,
it's no longer controversial, and there's so much evidence and research to support this. I don't want to paraphrase what he says in the video. I think people should go and watch it. Again, it's in the show notes. It's really beautiful. The research he's looking at is an experiment with MDMA where the individuals lay on a couch for 8 hours and took ecstasy with 2 therapists there with them, and it helped them go to places that had never been before as far as reflecting on the trauma they'd been through, and the way they're dealing with that and the way it's showing up in their present life. It gave them a bit of distance from what they're currently experiencing. So
that's a crucial point, though, that he's talking about it being done in a controlled environment with therapists as a means to become more compassionate towards yourself and sort of access parts of your mind and be more open to things, and not just like, if you've got some MDMA in your drawer back from 2 Tribes, just grab that. No, it's not that. It's like he's talking about a very controlled. Haven't thought about 2 Tribes in a while, have you?
They're more Gatecrasher. I haven't thought about them in a long time.
Gatecrasher. Yes, no, this is a controlled environment with therapists. Yes, that it's a very different thing. So that's I just thought that'd be worth saying.
Yeah, very much so. So I'd recommend. I mean, we should actually do an episode on this one day. I'd be fascinated to, because whenever any research you're doing on mental health or dealing with trauma, it just all roads seem to lead to psychedelics at the moment. And so I would never do it. The thought of it absolutely terrifies me. But it is one of he says it's one of the most powerful modes of dealing with trauma.
Wow.
Josh, would you do it?
I'd be yeah, I'd love to do it. The
I'd be fascinated.
The guided sessions, yeah, I would. I was actually thinking how much I'd like to do it when you were talking about it, but thinking I probably wouldn't qualify for it. I don't think I've gone through anything traumatic enough that would warrant the sessions.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd be fascinated to do it.
That would be a good question, actually, that I would love to ask him or anyone. Maybe we can ask Dr. M, maybe she knows. But, is there a level of trauma that you have to be at to sort of like qualify? Like, or is it just for, does it not matter what the song
Yeah,
is?
the idea that you could, heavily guided with professionals and therapists, access a new way of looking at your life and access new ways of thinking about yourself and doing it with compassion. Because I've often, self-compassion has always been a real struggle for me. So the idea that I could access more of that I think is incredibly exciting. And I would, I think I'd probably jump at the chance.
Yeah, I think I would too.
It's amazing that you actually say self-compassion there, Josh, because in the video, he summarizes it all by saying these are all ways of cultivating self-compassion, which is the way you get through trauma.
Yeah. Okay.
And what was that? What was that show that was on? It was on Netflix. It was Nicole Kidman in that 9 Perfect Strangers. Bridge, very good. Our producers jumped in there. 9 Perfect Strangers. I mean, that's essentially the whole idea behind the show.
I think it was actually on Amazon, but no big deal.
Okay, Amazon. Sorry. The show on. Oh yeah, that's why we got it. Actually, that's why we got it on our TV because we wanted it for that reason. So,
right.
Yeah, no, I mean that whole TV series is essentially around psychedelics and the impact they have. But anyway, that's psychedelics is number 6.
Great.
I actually went to the comments section after I watched this YouTube video because I feel like you get a real good sense for. I mean, my thoughts were a lot of people who have experienced trauma would have watched this video and then responded from the heart with whether it was absolute bullshit or it was triggering for them. And I don't think I've ever seen such overwhelming positivity for a YouTube video in my entire life.
Well, they're a lot of people.
Sorry. Because to go through the steps again very quickly, there's psychotherapy, EMDR, yoga, theatre and movement, neural feedback, psychedelics. So he says at the end, one size doesn't fit all. What works for one person may not work for another. Healing from trauma is an experiment. And I think that's really, really important. That's not 6 steps you do in a row. That's not you have to do one before the other. It is an experiment for people to see what works for them.
Right, okay.
And I really like those because I feel like, I look at that, there's no way on earth I'd do psychedelics. I'm too scared of drugs. But I could see myself getting into many of the others, just as good evidence-based places to start to help you deal with trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an important thing because, when you were reading the 6 steps, I was assuming it's like, okay, first try this, then then try that, then try that. But it's more just like these are 6 things, not in any order, or am I getting that wrong?
No, he doesn't say. These are all things that he has found evidence.
Just 6 things.
Yeah, 6 things that he found evidence that will support people in dealing with trauma.
Gotcha.
And if I can add my one, number 7, it is run. It's as simple as that. I just...
Run from your problems? Just run, man. Just run away.
Yeah, sorry, I should clarify.
Run,
jog. Run.
Yes, yeah.
However, I'm sure it goes to all types of exercise, but in my experience, nothing quite. I mean, psychologists that you both see, Maria, has talked to me about the fact that running jolts a brainstem and can break the transmission of anxiety. I think that was her wording, which I haven't read more about. I'm not going to go into the details of that because I don't understand it, but that was a very simple description she gave me once. She said that or jumping on the trampoline is really powerful for that. But just the experience of running for me, and I know so many people ask me, what should I do for my friend who's struggling with this, or what do I do because I'm struggling with this? I'm not a psychologist, so I never give out advice, but I do feel like saying to people, I just feel like giving them a brand new pair of running shoes and saying, just wear these things out. Come back to me when these are worn out and you tell me how you're going. For me, the experience of running, if it's half an hour, the first 10 minutes, I can feel the stress of the day on my shoulders. I can feel it throughout my body. My mind is racing. For the next 10 minutes, all those issues, the stress disappears. I don't feel those voices go really quiet. And then the last 10 minutes of the run, all of a sudden I can hear voices again, but they're really positive and optimistic voices. And I don't have any tension in my body. I feel like any issues I was having, I've come out with solutions for. It's just such a positive experience. It's such a metronomic, the sound of your feet on the concrete, whatever it is. It's so, I'm not going through trauma, but whatever has happened during the day, I feel like it's such a healing thing to experience. So that's my final one, is running, to add to all that.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't have the scientific evidence to back it right now, but yeah.
Well, you've got your own personal experience. I mean, I've always found it hard to run. I've never been able to get in. Not that I've really tried that hard, but running is just like, for me, I can only imagine it would be so beneficial, but I find it really, really hard to do. So I would probably start with the other 6 before running. I'd probably
you do psychedelics before you did.
I'd probably do MDMA before running. To be honest,
I'll join you, right?
I think we might even. I mean, Em will definitely listen to these before we release them, but we might even get Em to have a chat about them at some point because, I mean, they come from a psychiatrist, not me. But I do highly recommend his work. Bessel van der Kolk, you can look him. I mean, we'll put the video in the show notes and maybe a link to his book.
That's great.
The Body Keeps the Score, because it's very popular for people dealing with trauma. So a huge thank you to Mark for taking us to a place that I think I felt like it was almost rare sitting there listening to you and Mark talk about something really, really traumatic. But I think it's going to have, in the car, the way I heard from the interview, I was thinking to myself, for not just me, anyone listening to that who's going through something similar right now, I just think hearing someone else talk about it and reflect on it would make them feel less alone. And if that's put aside the 6/7 steps to dealing with trauma, I think if people have listened to Mark and felt less alone, I think that's a really good thing. So thank you, Mark and Josh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And Jet's albums are available on all good music services.
I wonder how many albums you'll sell off the back of this. People heading down to Brushes or JB Hi-Fi. There's a Brushes in Mornington Shopping Centre for anyone
Still?
Yep.
Is it really? A Brushes?
Nah, maybe it's Sanity. No, Sanity. It's a Sanity. It's Sanity.
Brushes.
Anyone who's under the age of... Well, Josh, you know that reference. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know Brushes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was like multicoloured stripe.
Great place to get your tapes and your videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TDK 90s. Really good quality.
Yeah.
Well, guys, great to see you. Thanks again. And I'll be back in the studio with you very, very shortly. Can't wait.
Immensely exciting to see you again.
Very
in
exciting.
real life.
Yeah, it is. Okay, great. All right, guys. Take care. Ciao.
See you soon. Bye.
Hugh, it's Ryan. I love that episode with Mark, and I've become like really inspired. I reckon the 3 of us should start a band. Can you imagine, like the 3 of us on the road touring? It would be so much fun. I mean, I've already thought about who can do what. Well, sort of like Josh, obviously. Josh is the musical one, so he should sing, play lead guitar, obviously, and I mean, obviously write all the songs. And then I can't play any instruments, so I'm just trying to think what I could do in the band. I could be the band manager, organise all the tours, negotiate deals. So I'll do that. Josh is doing all the music. What can you do? So I'm just trying. You can't do music either, can you? We'll have 2 band managers. It's a bit unconventional, but who cares? 2 band managers, 1 musical genius. That's the band. 3-way split, obviously. Like, that's the only fair way to do it. So, I'm pumped. That's going to be a great band that we'll have, the 3 of us. 3-way split. Wow. Music, huh? Anyway, it's Ryan Shelton from the podcast.
To call back, press 22. To replay message, press 1 to reply.
If this episode has been triggering for you, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is hosted and co-produced by Hugh Van Cuylenberg, Brian Shelton and Josh Van Cuylenberg. This episode was produced by Bridget Northeast, filmed by Andy Poole and edited by George Martin. A special thanks to Dr. M for her expertise and guidance. We'd also like to thank the Resilience Project for their ongoing support.
I hear the echo down the hall, like you were never there at all. Just leave me down here.